Morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Marketing, Communication, and Sales Forum event. At your fingertips, MarTech strategies in a digital landscape. I'm Carrie Neese, Director and Market Development Leader for the Midwest region of KPMG and Chair of the Executives Club Marketing, Communications, and Sales Forum. I'm excited to welcome you today for a panel discussion on how today's marketing leaders design successful digital marketing campaigns and drive indisputable ROI on their investments. Before we get started today, I have one quick housekeeping note for the audience. Last month, the Executives Club launched a brand new podcast called The Executives Exchange, featuring CEO and founder interviews with the top leaders in Chicago. Please take a moment to take out your phone and subscribe to the Executives Exchange wherever you get your podcasts. Megan is also dropping a link into the chat, I believe, where you can learn more. So on to today's event. We hope you can keep your video on during the next hour if that helps you feel more engaged. And if you'd like a more focused view, please put your Zoom in speaker mode. It is located in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Today, I'm thrilled to feature Chris Broyles and Jason Galloway from KPMG, Amy Costigan from United Airlines, Kelly Walbert from Horizon Therapeutics, and Shadabi Basu. I know we're in for a great discussion with these panelists today. We will have time for audience questions at the end of the program and encourage you to send them via the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today, and thanks to our speakers for taking the time to share their insights with us. All right, Jason, over to you.
That sounds great. Thanks, Carrie. Appreciate it. Really looking forward to today's conversation. I think we have a really great panel. So let's jump right in. My name is Jason Galloway. I'm a partner at KPMG, where I lead marketing consulting. So why don't we go ahead and we're going to do a quick round of introductions on our panelists today. Kelly, would you like to go first? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe a trip you're looking forward to taking this year.
Good morning, thanks. My name is Kelly Walbert, and I'm an Executive Vice President for Strategic Marketing in our infused medicines business at Horizon Therapeutics, which is a biopharmaceutical company based in actually in Dublin, Ireland, but we also have main headquarters here in Deerfield, Illinois. My trip that I'm looking forward to taking this summer is I'm going mountain biking in Utah, and I cannot wait.
That's great. That sounds like fun. Chris.
Sure. My name is Chris Broyles. I'm Executive Director and Digital and Creative Lead for KPMG here in the US and based in Chicago. We're in growth and strategy, marketing, so all sorts of digital marketing, creative aspects to this job. And a trip that I am looking forward to, we are going to go to Florida later in August to beautiful Rosemary Beach in 30A, which my Southern friends are always telling me I'm not supposed to tell all of us Midwesterners about this little oasis because we're going to overrun it, but highly recommend it and looking forward to it.
All right, excellent. So Amy.
Thanks, Jason. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Costigan. I'm with United Airlines based in Chicago, and I am the Managing Director of Digital Marketing, Personalization, and Ancillary Products, connecting with consumers on every step of the journey and offering them products and services that make their experience better. So I'm thrilled you're asking a question about travel, because wouldn't it be great if everybody wanted to travel right now? A trip I am looking forward to is this summer. I'm going with my family to Albuquerque. It's my father's goal to visit every state in the US. He has 4 left. One of them is New Mexico. So we'll be checking that one off with him this summer.
Sounds great. Well, I'm just excited as well to hear everybody talk about actually traveling places and going things. So I think that's great. So Shadabi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shadabi Basu. I have over 2 decades of experience in technology marketing, or marketing for technology products and services. My expertise is in growth marketing. I really enjoy growing businesses from scratch. So I did in startups like Savoy and KareerBot, or growing business lines and franchises in Fortune 100s like Hewlett Packard and Allstate. And my passion is digital marketing and e-commerce. So while I think MarTech is extremely important for all aspects of marketing, when you think of digital marketing and e-commerce, it's absolutely critical. And so I'm very excited about this discussion and looking forward to it. And thanks, Jason, for inviting me.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Shatabdi, for being here. Awesome. Oh, trip. What trip are you going to take this summer?
Oh, looking forward to, as a vacation, I'm looking forward to Mexico, going to Riviera Maya. It was the end of summer, but I'm taking multiple trips because my daughter horse shows. So I'm going to Kentucky, I'm going to Traverse City, Michigan. So there are many trips that I'm looking forward to.
Great. And I'm sure all on United Airlines, right, Amy? So, so
I can recommend it. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So why don't we go ahead and kind of start with more of a big picture question on digital marketing to really start today's questioning. So, so Kelly, Amy, these are going to be for you guys, but a couple questions. So first, what are you kind of seeing as the biggest trends and disruptors in digital marketing? Kelly, would you like to go first?
Sure. The biggest trends we're seeing are not a surprise to anyone, but we're seeing, dramatic increases in utilization of really all things digital. And that actually helped us adjust some of our execution of a pretty significant product launch that we have, but increases in use of, nonlinear broadcast, all types of social media increases, and all virtual engagements. So those are the trends that we're seeing. Some of the disruptors are in our industry. Healthcare is not particularly advanced, not an early adopter of a lot of digital technologies. And so the disruptor was healthcare and pharma finally jumping in and becoming much more engaged digitally with our customers. So that was the disruptor.
Okay, great. Amy?
Sure, and I'll just add on to what Kelly was saying. Similarly, data and data modeling, it's not brand new, but continued growth in the importance of machine learning, enabling of targeting customers when they're in the right mindset, presenting an offer that's relevant to the specific individual, and making it fun by gamification. As well as incentivizing desired behaviors and other actions. So using data to model past behaviors, purchases, engagement levels, and price sensitivity, and countless other insights really provide an engaging message or promotion, enable us to provide an engaging message or promotion. I would say as far as a disruptor, the phasing out of third-party cookies, which are really the tracking mechanism for someone's online behavior, it helps to deliver relevant and targeted content to specific audiences. But I would say I call it a short-term disruptor because I'm not wanting to oversimplify this, but much like many other advancements in technology, you need agility to respond and finding other ways like first-party data solutions to address it.
Yeah, I think that transitions nicely maybe even to the next question. You talk a little bit about agility. We obviously know this past year, everything from the pandemic to racial justice movements and all these other things, it's kind of a crazy time in our world of marketing, right? Especially of how we've tried to how to pivot. So have you seen this stuff kind of really improve the agility and flexibility of corporate marketing, or maybe more expose some of the vulnerabilities in that area?
I'd say in the past year, it's really emphasized the need to be agile and respond to quickly changing environment. Again, the data is really so valuable here. At United, the time following the immediate drop in demand, marketing really took a pause. It wasn't necessarily the right thing to do for our industry because so many people were feeling uncomfortable about traveling. But we needed to create signals to understand where customers were on the interest spectrum, because we did see people coming to our digital channels and engaging and searching for flights and looking for information on safety. So we've developed really these signals to understand where customers are on this spectrum. Are you ready to take a trip? Okay, then we want to make sure to show a customer how, what special deals we have. If they're engaging in a different way, just looking for safety, we would serve them up an ad, promoting our Clean Plus and all the steps that we're taking to, make the travel experience safe. And if someone's not interested, you have to be empathetic. And we weren't promoting travel when it wasn't the right time for different consumers. And the data modeling really enables us to respond in this way.
Yeah, that's great. Kelly, how about you?
Well, let's see. One of the things that we found, I mentioned earlier, is a significant increase in social utilization between patients sharing their experience. So looking to one another for solutions, particularly with regard to healthcare and with dealing with some of the complexities of trying to access healthcare during a pandemic. As everyone's well aware, most medical institutions stopped seeing patients. Many doctors' offices were shuttered. People were only able to deal with the pandemic and deal with COVID. And so what we did is we increased our engagement in social media to help people find options for alternative means of dealing with some of the healthcare challenges that they had to face other than COVID. So social provided a really big opportunity to do that. I think that a really good point was made about some of the data modeling. What we were also able to do with the pandemic required us to change and adapt very quickly. The advantage, though, is it also required our customers to change and adapt very quickly. So while we changed our game and increased our digital engagement with our customers, what we found is that they were also much more receptive because they didn't have alternatives either. And I think that that was one of the things that was very unique during the pandemic.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate that. So Shatabdi, Chris, maybe we'll go on to maybe another big picture question. We all know that the number of tools and services and those sorts of things that marketers use has been exploding over the last few years. If you look at the MarTech, now what is it, like 20,000 it seems like, but I don't know, the MarTech 5,000 I think is what they're still calling it. But you look at that and trying to navigate everything is can be hard, right? And especially if you want to implement stuff effectively. So how do you go about really determining where to devote your time and resources? And maybe most importantly, how do you measure kind of that return on investment? Shatabdi, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, this is, I'm always very excited to talk about this because I really believe that planning and executing on the MarTech and the right MarTech stack is a central and critical marketing strategy for CMO or senior marketing leader. Because the right MarTech stack can grow your business efficiently and can scale with your business, whatever stage you're at. It draws very tight alignment between sales and marketing and can drive consistency across multiple channels of marketing. So it's really an enabler for your business. And when you think of it from that perspective, it becomes critical. And but as you said, Jason, it's when you look at it and with all the different technology products available today, it can be quite overwhelming. So for me, and I remind my team is, we always should start from basics. Know your customers, right? The key customer segments. Know the journey, the customer journey. Know the leverage points. Know how you want to reach and how you can reach those customers at those leverage points. And what are the channels? Because once you have that clear, then you can prioritize, right? You don't have to build everything out in one shot, but you can prioritize on that roadmap of what is it that we need. And then, I think of a good MarTech stack like a good house. The foundation has to be strong. And then it has to be, it has to offer flexibility because there will be pivots, no matter whether you're a startup or you're a, multi-billion-dollar enterprise, there would be pivots in your business. So, a good MarTech technology or MarTech stack should allow that flexibility. And it should be built across all aspects, across the funnel, right? From awareness to, consideration to conversion to retention, retargeting. Now, when we think about ROI, Jason, it's a very, it's not as straightforward. It's a complicated equation because it really depends on what your business goals are and how you measure that ROI across these different parts of the funnel. For example, if you think about awareness and brand, those are long-term goals, right, for every business. And then you think of some businesses, that is the key goal. And for some businesses which are in high growth mode or a startup, conversions might be more in-year revenue is key because you have that runway. That's a shorter term goal. So part can be part of your investment in MarTech can be CapEx, part can be part of your OpEx. And what is that equation really depends on the type of business you have. So there is no straightforward answer to that, but I think it's time well spent for every senior executive to understand that because it's important to measure that ROI correctly. And I think if you have flexibility, if you build that stack, and case in point is what we did at Allstate Identity Protection, and the KPMG team led by Jason and Craig built a fantastic stack for us. And so that allowed us, last year as I was listening to the others, was year of where everybody had to pivot and make several changes, right, to adapt to our customer needs, to adapt to the market. And we felt in AIP, which is traditionally a B2B business, that there might be some opportunity in direct to consumer. So because of the tech stack that we had, the marketing tech stack, we could really turn on a dime and run some quick experiments and campaigns over 12 weeks and bring down $1,000 plus CAC to $100 CAC and prove out to this direct to consumer channel, which was completely written off and not even considered within this business, as a significant growth mode for the business. So that really is the beauty of having the right marketing tech stack. So now when you ask me, I think about it and I was like, how do I measure ROI? When I measure that ROI, it's tremendous, right? So it's really about focusing on prioritizing the MarTech stack and then understanding that ROI equation, which would be unique to every business.
Yeah, those are some great points. Thanks, Shatabdi. Those are some really good points. And Chris, so how have you kind of thought about that, especially as I was talking about, I think a typical marketing organization, I was even meeting with one yesterday that wasn't, frankly, that large of a company, but I think they had over 80 different applications, right? So how have you thought about, okay, where do I devote my time? Where do I devote my resources and making sure we kind of get that return on investment? How have you thought about that?
Yeah, so, being a B2B company, right, from a professional services standpoint, we had a very different experience last year, which was that we were really thrust into, this triage mode of setting up COVID response websites, of figuring out how do we market to across different industries to make sure that we were there to help them and support them through not just the quarantine part of the first stage of the pandemic, but then as we kept going into the summer and fall. And what that really started kind of exposing a bit was the need to respond a little bit more efficiently and more effectively to find out not just what the customers, in this case, these business clients, were needing for support. And so in a good timing situation, we're undergoing this front office transformation, as my KPMG colleagues know, and the implementation of Salesforce as our new CRM. So what we were able to do was also bring in the marketing cloud and all the bundled tools that are now available through Salesforce in that. And so we're in the process right now of that implementation. And so while implementing effectively is obviously key, the biggest change for us is the behavioral change, because not just from the CRM standpoint, obviously this giant wiki, but really with the marketing cloud, we're talking about journeys and customer experiences and audiences and distributed marketing. How do we get out and across? And what we're realizing as we're doing these behavioral shifts and changes and upskilling, that's where our time and resources are at the moment. And so far, what we've experienced is that there's excitement, and we know that we're already seeing how, as these processes roll out, how it's going to just change the way that we're able to measure things at the end. So you're using data and analytics, you're taking this data-driven approach, and what that allows you to do is really establish some clean, clear KPIs at the outset. So you've got these baselines and you've got goals. So when you're talking back to the business and to the partners, we're able to say, here's where we're starting, here's what our goal is. Now we can carry this through, optimize through the process, through the funnel, as we were just talking about. And then at the very end, we've got a measurement. And so now with that clear-cut ROI, we know that not only have we, from a qualified standpoint, figured out better leads, better approach to customers, but we're able to quantify the marketing and what our work is as well, which I think from a marketing perspective is always something that you have to balance. So I think right now that's the biggest change that we're trying to make. I think in terms of the investment in that MarTech stack and refreshed tools that are cutting edge, that are part of that particular bundle, but also making sure that we've done the appropriate behavioral changes in habits of our employees as well.
Great, thanks, Chris. And we're starting to get a couple questions coming in on the chat. Go ahead, feel free to keep sending those in if you could, please. And we'll definitely have some time, last say 15, 20 minutes or so to really answer those. So thanks for sending those in. Just keep those coming, and we'll keep an eye on those as well. So this question is for everybody. And Kelly, I'll start with you if I could. We understand, as we talked about, just kind of the pace of change last year in general, right? And the change of how quickly customers' needs are changing. Obviously, we've always talked about that even prior to the pandemic, but massive changes where people going digital overnight, the customer, how you have to service them and sell to them and market to them and everything changed dramatically, right? And so the question for everybody ultimately is going to be, what have you really had to change around your processes, your technology, or even your operating model to keep up with those changing customer needs?
Thanks. Our first decision, and I think it was an appropriate one at the time, in the midst of so much change, is, what were we going to focus on? And our strategy was to be brilliant at the basics. We didn't really feel that it was a time to innovate and try new things, but to really focus on executing kind of the world that our customers knew well. So many of the tactics that we used to go to market with our traditional field organization changed only to the extent that they were no longer face-to-face, but they were digital. They were, through Zoom, through WebEx, through kind of the applications that we're accustomed to now. And so we focused our efforts on training the field. The behavioral change that was referenced earlier really became key. And so actually far less at kind of the critical time did we had a good MarTech stack. We're already leveraging Salesforce, so we had a good CRM system. What we had to do was train our field organization and help them learn better how to use these tools and facilitate them in adapting to virtual engagement. The good news is that what we found in the midst of all of that transition is actually a virtual engagement with our customers, physicians in our case, lasted 10 times longer than a typical face-to-face engagement. So there were some huge advantages to what was happening in the midst of all of the chaos. And what we have now is we have a field organization, a sales organization that is now trained and prepared to engage with their customers digitally. I don't think that the customer engagement needle has kind of settled on where we're ultimately going to land as we come through this. So we're looking very closely at how we manage through customer engagement in the future. But early on, it was all about managing and being brilliant at the basics.
That's great. Thanks, Kelly. And so Amy, as you guys have really thought about this, you obviously huge downturn in kind of demand, those sorts of things. Now it's picking up in a really big way. I know I saw a news article the other day that said no longer can you expect to get to the airport and get through in 15 minutes any longer. So you might want to show up to flights a little bit earlier. I know I've flown recently and just the airports are going crazy. So hopefully demand, I'm sure, is looking up for you guys. What have you guys had to change as well around that customer and around your process, technology, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We are seeing recovery come back in travel, particularly in the leisure space, and people that travel less for business, but more visiting friends and relatives, different travel segment. And so some of these customers are more familiar with how things work at the airport, some are less, but the pace of the pandemic and the travel landscape and how it has changed so rapidly, even the most experienced travelers have new things to get used to. So our focus has really been on, in the digital space, making it easy. I mean, that should always be our focus, but this has just been on steroids. We've accelerated innovation through new features through our digital channels to really respond to what the changing customer needs are. So things like introduction of features like agent on demand and contact list type experience really minimize the in-person interactions, which is really from a customer experience perspective, something that people are looking for during the pandemic. But as far as engaging with our customers through marketing, we've really expanded from where we previously would focus on more of like the day of travel, like the actual travel day experience, and extending that window out to marketing communications at every customer contact, to make sure that consumers can be prepared and ready and have everything taken care of by the time they do get to the airport. So an example of a digital feature we've introduced is called the Travel Ready Center. So this provides up-to-date travel restrictions, different information on COVID-19 testing requirements that are required, and even provides the ability for customers to schedule their tests and upload their test results through our mobile app, which people are using now more than ever. And it really just eliminates a lot of the stressors that the pandemic has presented during the past year. And then when that travel day arrives, customers come to the airport ready to go without some of the added stressors that the whole past 15 months have really introduced. And a lot of our marketing, like from the digital marketing space, where acquisition was primary focus prior to the pandemic, we're looking at promoting all these new app features. So if you haven't traveled in the past 15 months, we have just been going gangbusters with introducing all these new features into our app and engaging with customers and informing them on the things that they can now do through the digital channels is critical to the business.
Yeah, that's great, Amy. It's interesting that one of the big positives of really limiting those customer touch points in terms of in person is obviously reduces your cost as well, right? It's what I think airlines have been trying to do for a really long time. It's a very manually and human intensive type thing, especially at the airport. And notice just the amount of like digital tools and stuff you now have, which I think has been, from a consumer standpoint, I think it's been great. And so Shatabdi, let's go to you and talk a little about the changing things. I mean, you kicked this off, your project, in terms of really trying to build that marketing tech stack and do an assessment and things right when the pandemic started, which obviously made things a little bit more interesting, as you had to not only think about, wow, our business is changing, we're thinking direct to consumer, but at the same time, by the way, oh, wow, we have this huge pandemic and we got to think about that. So how did you go about thinking through that and making even that determination to keep pushing forward?
Yeah, so Jason, I think the memories are very fresh, right? We were like flying the plane while building it. Yeah, and we have to change course. So yeah, I think, at AIP, the experience has been a little bit different than a lot of other businesses because the core product is, is an identity theft protection product. So what happened last year with the pandemic, that virtual lives exploded, right? People's virtual lives exploded. So that kind of increases the risk of identity theft. And then there were other situations like unemployment fraud increased by 1,700%. So these are all risks to identity theft. So as I was saying, that showed us like, okay, there is an opportunity in direct to consumer space. At the same time, Allstate launched a shelter in place program, and through which AIP, Allstate Identity Protection product, was offered free to all Allstate customers and general consumers. So suddenly we were completely in a different mode of marketing because now we are interacting directly with consumers. Millions of consumers have onboarded. And now in a business where it was always driven through brokers and partners and it was employee benefits business, you never really had to, it was not a critical factor, the consumer experience and driving engagement in the product in terms of retention when you think about it. But now it suddenly became the most, right? And everybody's thinking about, okay, we want to add value, want to give value to our customers, but when this period ends, right, what about retention and how do we do that? So data analytics, we had to pivot significantly at that point, and thank God for having a very flexible foundational layer that your team had planned, that we could and build a robust data infrastructure around consumer data, which then helped us, driving that delightful consumer experience on the product, higher engagement, which then translated to retention at the end of the year. So our challenge was, there was opportunity, and with every opportunity, I think, comes challenge. So we kind of faced it. We were drinking from the fire hose at one point. But again, coming back, I think we were only successful, Jason, because we had a robust roadmap and we had already done certain level of prioritization. So pivoting from that point, we had the plan together was, although we were at initial stages, and I don't want this to be confusing because Allstate as a business does have a very robust marketing tech stack already, but that's again, from business to business, it's different. Here we're talking about a digital product in consumer mode, right? Versus the traditional Allstate business is very different. It's agent-driven insurance business. So the tech stack is not geared towards handling digital conversions or e-commerce the way we needed at this point. So it was, really something we were building from scratch. And, because we had the prioritization and the plan and the roadmap, we could pivot. So a lot of things were done differently in terms of data analytics and all of that.
Yeah, that's huge. And Chris, if you think about then coming to you, changing customer needs, right? As you being a business partner of mine and helping me actually get my services out there, right? I mean, gone were the days of us going to client sites every single day and talking with clients and selling. So marketing became that much more important, right? So as really kind of the needs of the customers changed, but frankly, the needs of the organization you were serving changed, what did that change around your processes, your technology, and kind of your op model?
Yeah, so, well, starting with the op model, I mean, the biggest change was trying to take this kind of transformational moment, not only for marketing because of all the things you said, the changing of how to approach customers, how do we support sales, how do our field marketers interact with business as well. And so what we realized was we needed to consolidate our digital and creative, we needed to consolidate our brand team and campaigns, so that way we had these centers of excellence that knew we could serve and kind of play this pivot role, not to use the pivot word, over abuse of our pivot. I know I say pivot all the time, not in the Friends way, pivot. But what we wanted to do now is figure out what are the technologies that are going to be most useful. And number one, and probably the only answer for us from a digital and creative standpoint, video. I mean, video was just not only 7 to 8 times more videos and more requests for it, but it changed the way we interacted from a one-on-one standpoint through social media, implementing LinkedIn Live, the Zoom revolution, Teams, WebEx, et cetera, name your tool. But what we wanted to do, I think by the time we got through those first clumsy months of getting a lot of people adopted to using video as their only means of interacting with the market, what we started trying to figure out was what are the innovations and what are some of these innovative ways of changing that experience utilizing video. And so I think kudos to the actual producers of different video tools, of production companies and peers and colleagues of mine with external agencies, as well as my own talented team. I was very happy to, when I came on board to KPMG, to have them rise to this occasion that took place over these past 12 months as well. But I think the pace of innovation in video has been momentous. And I've been working in video of some sort for 25 something years. And this is the most excited I've been about video since the early streaming media days back in the mid 90s. And I think that we're in a similar revolution where there's going to be some incredible benefits to what that industry has had to do these past 12 months. And the after effects of this are going to, I think, really, it's going to take video to new levels that we haven't even seen yet. So definitely, I feel like that was the biggest technological change because it affected so many of us as kind of in a very meta moment. Here we are on video.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Chris. So we have about 10 minutes left, and then we're going to get to the Q&A. So please keep your questions coming in if you have Q&A. But I have one question left for each person. So about 10 minutes. So if we keep that in mind. But so Kelly, if I could come to you first, if that's okay. You know, as a biopharmaceutical company, crazy time like for your team to navigate as you really think through things and really have to thank the pharmaceutical industry in general for things getting somewhat back to normal in general. But, you know, what did the pandemic teach you about your customers? And, you know, how did you kind of collect and utilize the right data to inform your campaigns and really to serve your stakeholders' best interest? And you're on mute, Kelly, as well. Oh, there you go.
I think that probably what I said earlier is that one of the biggest learnings and one of the biggest opportunities was that our customers were forced to change. So there hasn't historically been tremendous, and on the B2B side of pharma, there hasn't been tremendous digital engagement with physicians because there wasn't really the opportunity. We were in a kind of very traditional model of face-to-face call. So that was the biggest change. The way we collected the data was by having kind of the right CRM program to understand those engagements. And then the other significant change in our business is that medical meetings are a huge opportunity for engagement with our customers, and all medical meetings, like all other meetings, were canceled. And so we had to quickly learn how to have virtual meetings. And so we developed like a virtual trade show booth, if you will, to engage with our physicians. And we were able to kind of, through traditional means, capture how many times they came through the booth, how many engagements we had with them, what their activities were, and use that information to frame out kind of our follow-up engagement strategies with them. So where they came in, what information, what data was most interesting to them, what they engaged with most often. We then took that, repackaged it, and sent out follow-up communications to different customers based upon that. One of the other things that we had to do is we had to very quickly know how to engage with our customers and how to reach them, because we didn't necessarily have their digital contact information or preferences on how they would like to be engaged digitally. So we actually had to go out and scrape the web to learn about our own customers' digital engagement preferences. And the way that we did that was by looking on the web at how they invited customers to come in and talk with them. So we captured email addresses by scraping the web, digital, websites, et cetera, for ways to engage with our customers. We were able to bring that inside and then reach out to them through essentially their own requests that they had sent to their customers on the web. And that's one of the ways that we quickly developed a database of email access and email addresses to engage with our customers. So that was probably one of the more interesting things that we did to identify our customers' engagement preferences.
That's great. Thanks, Kelly. And Shatabdi, I'll come to you and talk a little about culture and environment. We frankly know that one of the hardest parts is just not even the technology changes, but frankly, just how do we get our people on board, right? And there's the change management aspect. So if we think about culture, we think about environment, you have a really unique background of working with startups and Fortune 100 companies and kind of a wide variety of things. So, what's like maybe one constructive aspect of each of these worlds that you would like pick to say, hey, this is what we can kind of learn from each other and what we could kind of use? You're on mute as well, Mary.
I think the most important thing that I've learned through my experiences at startups and Fortune hundreds is the most important thing is to foster a culture of innovation and diversity, supported by respect and empathy. Culture of innovation, as borrowing from the famous saying, necessity is the mother of invention. I feel innovation is the mother of success, and to really encourage and inspire the team to come up with different ideas, voice their ideas, and the entire organization to be receptive to those and have productive discussions and debates. And I always tell everyone in the organization is be empowered to fail. And it sounds counterintuitive, but it's really important that people are not scared of failure. They must test their ideas and learn from them. Otherwise, you don't know what works and what doesn't. And, I think that's fear of failure can be crippling to an organization. Diverse ideas come from diverse backgrounds. And I've been fortunate to work with people coming from many different backgrounds. And I've been amazed to see how these different backgrounds shape their creativity. So I really think, Jason, if you're asking, what is that one thing that works in every organization? In my experience, I think having an innovative and diverse team can be the key to success.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the whole idea, I know you and I have talked about this before, just fail fast, right? I mean, try it, move on, but don't beat people up if they fail for trying something that's a little outside of the box. And that's, I know as leaders, that's sometimes harder to say, harder to do than say, right? Because like, well, shoot, that hurt, right? But as long as it wasn't a fatal blow, keep trying, right? Keep going. So I think that's a really great point. So thanks for sharing that. So Amy, so coming to you then, if I could, and talking about personalization, obviously you've been at United for a while. I won't say how long, but you've been at United for a while. So personalization has changed a bit, right? Heck, it's changed a lot just in the last 5 years. I remember my first project even a few years ago, looking at AI and machine learning of how do we do personalization on a mass scale. So how is that, as airlines have had to change and stuff a lot here recently, how has that changed maybe with new priorities and messaging or just the technology itself? How have you kind of thought about that?
Yeah, and thank you, Jason, for not mentioning the decade that I started at United. But you are so right. Personalization really was only an idea back just a few years ago, and we didn't even have a formal organization to support it until I believe 2017, 2018 timeframe. But you're right. So we've vastly really grown the range of what customers need and what they're looking for, specifically in the past year, because where we saw this range of travelers from very infrequent, traveling on leisure maybe once a year, call them inexperienced and not even have a preferred carrier, to somebody that travels once a week and knows exactly what they need and just wants the speed pass through. And where we were targeting through these different consumers, the pandemic has just broadened this range so immensely, and these new personas have really emerged throughout this process. And so now we have customers that might be in that more frequent traveler range, but haven't been to an airport in the past 15 months. And so it just teases out these new segments and different requirements for us to personalize even more. And so going back to what I was saying with using business rules and machine learning to personalize not only the content that we show a consumer, but what is it they're looking for and what they need, but it's the experience itself, where we can direct one customer through a different path versus another. And we've just been growing in this space immensely to personalize the journey for each customer. And then just kind of adding on what Chatabi was talking about with testing and learning, that is something that is so critical to being able to move forward in this space itself. So, and this is really infused throughout all of United, from our innovation lab at Chicago O'Hare, where we test out touchless kiosks, agent on demand, through creative tests through our marketing campaigns. We've done more creative testing in the first quarter of 2021 than we did in the entire year of 2019, because we have so many different pieces of information that customers could potentially be looking for. So we test, we see what's working, we adjust. And we've even introduced a brand new channel through digital marketing. We've just introduced shopping by TV in a partnership with Hulu, using a new product that they have that is going to allow us to run multiple campaigns and see what resonates with consumers. So just the support of that testing. Failure is okay as long as you learn from it. It's all about celebrating the learnings and moving forward and continuing the innovation, because really good ideas can come from anywhere.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Amy. And if we talk about kind of those new ideas and creativity, Chris, this is for you. You talked about video even, right? Of, hey, really this emergence even recently. So as that starts to happen and you start to think more creativity, being more top of mind, can you talk maybe about a recent time where you're able to inject some creativity and maybe out of box thinking into a client solution?
Yeah, I would say, so creativity obviously can come in different flavors, right? Is it the picture? Is it the images? Is it, is it how you're perceiving it if you're the audience looking at it? Or is it something that's harder to articulate, and that is that you have an interaction with the company, with us, for instance, in this case, that it's more of a pull experience than a push. And I think that's probably been the more creative solutions that we've had. So somebody comes to us with a request for a tactic to put on a channel, right? So if it's a piece of thought leadership or white paper, or if it's a video, or if it's a social media post, what we're trying to do now is figure out how can we establish and set something up creatively so that the experience that somebody has, that journey, that the customer is taking is much more self-directed, sort of a little bit more choose your own adventure. So as they're going on, and so we recently did the speed of customer, this campaign, again, a little bit meta, customers to customers, and about where the status of their, where they felt their business was in terms of maturity models. And so we actually created a diagnostic test. So almost BuzzFeed style, where you're answering certain questions. We use Saros, which is a great immersive design platform that has all sorts of opportunities to interact with it from a digital standpoint, and a lot of freedom to flexibly create what those images and graphics are as you go through the website. And so that experience, though, is much more directed by you, the audience member, so that when you get to the end and you find out where you are in terms of sort of stress test, and then that request for more information is much more genuine and authentic, because you've actually come to that conclusion based on insights that I think read much more than just simply delivering a blog post or a white paper, and it just creates much more of an interactive experience. So I think we're really trying to think creatively in those, in kind of in that regard, where you take traditional pieces of media and really try to figure out how to bring it to life and make it much more of an interactive pull experience from the audience.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. So why don't we go ahead and go to some audience questions. Shatabdi, this first one's going to be for you, based on kind of your experience in financial services space, but also kind of startup. What strategies would you pursue to acquire customers in a B2B financial services area for fintechs? Any initial thoughts?
Yeah, so when you're thinking about B2B, the most efficient way to do it is account-based marketing. And but again, depends on the size of the business. If you're a startup, you're not going to spend money on ABM platform. And you're going to go much more individualized way. But really having your target defined very clearly. What is the type of business that you want to target, size, etc. Even from a business demographic standpoint, and then the persona. Businesses also have personas, and then how do you get to them? So. The one aspect of MarTech that's critical to B2B is the marketing and sales alignment. So the marketing automation platform talking to the CRM, and the tighter you are in defining your target, you're going to have tighter criteria on MQLs. And so you're not generating, millions of them. And so being really selective criteria, having that selective criteria for MQLs to passing on to SQLs to the sales, and then talking to sales constantly to drive that efficiency through the sales cycle is very important when you're thinking about B2B marketing. So those would be some very high level, top of the line. Everything depends on the size of the business, how you're going to do B2B marketing. So that's where, I would stop. And then, if there are additional questions on that, I can add more details.
Great. Thanks, Shatabdi. So this next question, Amy, let me direct this to you, and then anybody else wants to jump in as well. I think that'll be good. And just I'm sending the questions to you guys individually, just so you know it's coming your way. But so Amy, how do you balance the need to understand or cater to niche markets versus maintaining a mass marketing appeal? I'm sure with you guys, especially as you think about your different segments, whether it's business travelers, leisure, how do you kind of balance that?
Well, it's a good question. And there is a lot of testing that has been going on in this space to understand how we can do mass marketing for smaller type of initiatives. And I'll give you one example is countries are opening up their borders now. And we're looking at being able to let customers know where they can go and how they can fly, but putting out mass marketing is expensive. If we're going to do like a paid social type of campaign to get people interested in flying to Greece, we have to understand what customers would actually be interested in flying to Greece. And so we use the elements from our data to understand who has searched for Greece in the past, or who has traveled to Greece in the past, or who has shown interest in, going to Europe in this space. And so you do have to balance it out in the targeting mechanism that we have versus, you're not going to get a higher ROI with the mass marketing. So we do strict measurements on our spend and make sure we are getting ROI when it comes to acquisition. But for, all of that, I just go back to we have to test and see what actually does return some value and adjust and continue. And it's a continuous type of cycle.
That's great. Thanks, Amy. So this next question, Kelly, is for you. Sometimes marketing has limited resources. How do you discern when to focus on long-term or short-term projects, such as investing in transactions and services versus focusing on brand fortification?
Good question. I've said a couple of times that what we were confronted with, we chose to focus on to be brilliant at the basics. And that's part of that decision making right there, is that, sometimes you have to kind of go with the tools that you have available to you if you're going to execute quickly. And so that's often how we make the decision about, what action step we're going to take to prioritize first in terms of speed. What can we do quickly is often the answer for how we get into market quickly. And then the next question that we try to answer is, what is the best tool and what's the best resource to us to understand the effectiveness of our actions, so that we can build out longer term strategies. And so our next level of investment that's kind of longer term is on the technology that's required to really understand the return on the investments that we're making. So those are kind of the short term and long term investments that we make. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. So Chris, I'll take the next one for you here. New skills are a huge challenge for a lot of B2Bs in this area. Do you have an org chart or accountabilities chart showing the key internal roles that are critical to success in launching an MA practice within a company? What can be your most effective outsource and what important, more importantly, what can't, right? I mean, we're seeing a huge shift, and we've seen it back and forth, I think, over the decades of people bringing stuff in-house, taking stuff out of house. How do you really think about that? So have you put together a chart? How are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, and sort of ironically, I was brought in at the beginning of last year, so at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, to build an in-house agency. That was part of this thing, was to take and pivot back to an in-house, fully functional, fully filled agency. A little bit derailed, as you can imagine, in March, 7 weeks later. And so we really had to come up with more of a hybrid version of that. And so it's a good question, because we really had to look at immediately, what are our resources internally from a sheer human beings on the ground that we knew we could leverage from an in-house perspective, but where do we know we needed to continue to work with external partners, whether on the digital side or the creative side? I think you have a little bit more flexibility on the creative side to really rely on whether it's a great freelancer, a great small agency, or even a large agency to continue to kind of supplement what you need from a creative standpoint. But I think on the digital side, we realized that there were a lot of these new skills, whether they were associated with some of these, the new MarTech tools that we were bringing on board and had made some pretty significant investments in over these past few months, or more year really. But what we realized was some of these new skills, we had to rely on working with some of these alliance partners to help us identify what are the job descriptions for these. How do we need, because we knew we needed to have them in-house to be able to do, whether it's from a data and analytics standpoint, whether it's an alignment with our different functions from a tax audit advisory standpoint, or if it's looking at things that were more on this testing for new innovations and where they're going to be better to be embedded within the company. So I think that on the digital side, on the MarTech side, we've found that it really is essential to rely on some of these relationships and partnerships that we have with the companies that do it best. So talking to Salesforce about what is the best way to put an audience manager job description together, or somebody from an email operations manager. So we really are looking to figure out what are those new job descriptions going in through 21 into FY22. And then really relying on, I think, a lot of those friends and peers and external agencies and companies to help fill the blanks in a lot of the creative areas, despite the fact that we still are able to do a lot of the creative internally too, because that's an important part too, is to not be commoditized from a creative standpoint, to really make sure that the creative is just as aligned and substantively involved with a different service area or function from a B2B standpoint, because it'll be smarter, better, creative if they actually know what what industry they're serving or what service they're trying to create a new innovative piece of content for. So I think it's finding that balance, and we've definitely had to try to bridge that gap of internal to external.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. I think we have time for maybe one more question here, and we'll leave a couple minutes for Carrie for you to close out. But maybe Amy, if I can come to you, what are some strategies to engage customers in a virtual world who are not necessarily fluent with marketing modern technology? So how are you keeping and engaging those customers? I know it's always interesting because you see such a wide variety of people who buy tickets and fly, right? So how do you guys think about that? Because not everybody is tech fluent, right? I saw, for instance, and I was reading an article earlier today that Apple's even looking at now you'd be able to put your driver's license on your iPhone and work with TSA to use that as approved, right? So I mean, the technology is obviously changing dramatically. How are you guys thinking through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And the core philosophy of course is to make it as easy as possible for consumers. But even when I say that, that's require you to use a mobile device or a computer. But I would say we are trying to engage with consumers that if they want to speak to a person, even though it's through a digital device, you can still have a chat with an agent. So it doesn't all have to be through texting and through using your mobile device. It's just an easier way for you to connect with a human being still through a technology shortcut, so to speak. We also have other types of media that we can, assets that we can speak through at the airports, through our gate information screens, where you can see messages where you don't necessarily have to be using your own device, but you can be seeing the messages there. But yes, even my parents are able to, get used to doing things on the mobile device. It is becoming quite a requirement. We're just trying to make it as simple as possible and as less steps as possible, as well as providing guides and videos and how-tos to just make people more comfortable with using it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Amy. And Carrie, let me pass it back to you. I just want to really thank all the panelists for joining me today in the conversation. Hopefully people found it useful as well. I know I did. I thought it was some really great information. So thank you all for coming today. Carrie?
Thanks so much. Thank you, all of the panelists. There's so much knowledge and experience on this panel. I could just ask you questions for hours. And I do appreciate all the fantastic questions that the audience posed, because I think they really helped out with the conversation. Just listening to today's discussion, it's clearly evident that we obviously knew we were all going to have to be agile over this past year, but it also presented a ton of opportunity for us as marketers to get to know our customer better and in new ways that we really never had to before in the past. Engage with them in new ways that brought new opportunities to spend more time with them, as Kelly pointed out, or engage with them in new ways. So I just, it is exciting. There's obviously all the technical aspects of choosing the right technology and figuring out how to integrate it into your organization. But all of the, new ways to engage are just present so much opportunity. So very exciting to hear about all the ways the various organizations that are represented here today are doing that. And thank you again to all of you. Just transitioning out here, let's see, keep an eye. Asked me to ask you to keep an eye out for their upcoming programs. In particular, Friday, June 11th, there is a corporate social responsibility forum event on diversity, equity, and sustainable business. As always, you can sign up online at theexecutivesclub.org. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.